episode 10 of the Broadway Shuffle, a Texas Tech sports podcast with Conrad and Zyler. I'm Brennan, and welcome, Red Raiders, to Cincinnati week. We are officially 1-0 in the Big 12, gentlemen, and we have a time at 7 o'clock on Saturday night to go 2-0 against the Cincinnati Bearcats in the Jones. So how's the week going so far? And tell us your excitement level for this weekend. Z, I'll start with you, and then Conrad, you can go and you can give us our Kool-Aid flavor of the week.
Yeah, pumped for the game. The night games should be fun. They always are in Lubbock. I'm excited to go. I think it should be a pretty good environment. You're 3-1, looking to start 2-0 in conference for the first time in a really long time. I don't know when actually the last time you did that was. So hopefully Joey can accomplish that. Cincinnati should be amped up. They're also looking to start 2-0. So the winner of this game will be in pretty good position for the rest of the conference season. So hope the boys are ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, feeling really good about this game. I think it'll be a test for sure, but I think after last week you showed you're ready to play, you've improved, you're on the right track, and I think it'll be fun to see what we do on Saturday night in all black in front of a sold-out crowd. So really excited to see what we look like against Cincinnati. I think we'll look good, and that is why we are releasing our flavor of the week this week, Bearcat Blow Pop. That is our Kool-Aid flavor of the week, Bearcat Blow Pop, very original. You can order it through the comment section, through the DM section. You can let us know how many cases you would like, and it will be dropped off by drone to your front door, as has been the case in the past. So Bearcat Blow Pop is the flavor this week, and we are ready to go and to beat Cincinnati and to go 14-3 at home under Joey. So it'll be a good weekend for sure.
Bearcat Blow Pop. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. And oh, wow, I can't wait. I'm buying some of that. I mean, just off the name alone, I'm buying 100 cases. And if you're new to the Broadway Shuffle, we have the Kool-Aid Factory where we go over the stock of the Texas Tech football program each and every week. And on Wednesday nights, what we're going to start doing is releasing the flavor of the week and the hype level that you might be buying into against that opponent that week. And then on our Monday episodes, you will get a recap of the state of the Kool-Aid Factory from Conrad. So if we win, if our stock's rising, if the Kool-Aid Factory is humming, you will know on Mondays. And if you like the flavor of the week, then you will be buying the hype. And that is our goal, is to not only support our boys in red and black, but also increase the positivity around the program or talk about the depression of the program if it so goes that way. And we hope it doesn't happen Saturday night. I'll be there as well, hopefully. And so we're looking forward to a great week. I'm in the Dirty Myrtle right now in South Carolina, man. I'm all committed. I bought a headset, a mic, and I'm here in my hotel room, but there's a hurricane going right in the middle of me in Texas. So we got to see if we can find a way to Lubbock. I looked up what would I have to do if I rented a car. It would be a 24-hour drive, but anything to get me to the Jones at 7 o'clock on Saturday night, I'll be there, man. So we'll see, but it'll be great. And if this is your first time tuning in, we do have a fourth member as well. His name is Clayton Anderson, and he had a concert to go to the night of this recording. So we hope Clayton's having a great time. I don't know where he's at, what concert he's at, but
I don't hope he's having a good time. I hope he's missing out. This is going to be way better than any concert he could have been at, right?
You're right. His priorities are not in line, obviously. So
the fame that he could be gaining right now does not compare to how much fun he may be having or not having at the concert that he's at.
Yeah, exactly. So we miss Clayton, but he'll be back for Monday's episode, and we look forward to having him back. So, well, guys, this is a big week. We talked about this in our preview show that if you were 4-1 after Cincinnati, you've probably felt pretty good about your season, accepting a loss against Washington State, and even through the first couple of weeks where Texas Tech has been, we have an opportunity to do that still. And so, Z, Cincinnati's kind of have an up and down year. They are 3-1, but they haven't looked necessarily extremely impressive. What can you tell us about Cincinnati? And are there any injuries on our end, maybe before you get into that we need to know about?
Yeah, nothing on the injury front that's bad news. So that's the first time we've had a game week where that's not the case. So good on us. There is some hope on the defensive end side. Charles Esters was moved out of the out category and into the questionable category. I think he's probably 50-50 on whether he'd play, but if he does, I think he adds a ton to your room. He would have been, if Adedire and Spencer went out, he probably would have been your best edge rusher. So he would be a big addition to have, especially against this team. Just another note from the Cincinnati press conference. I don't like Scott Satterfield. I think Louisville was trying to fire him, and they were fortunate that Cincinnati hired him away. I don't think he's not my favorite coach in the world, but he is pretty forthcoming with injury stuff, and I do appreciate that. They will be missing their starting left guard, D'Artagnan Tinsley, so they'll rotate two guys at that left guard spot, but everybody else for them should be full go. No big returnees for them. Nothing really to note in that press conference. If you haven't watched Cincinnati, like most Tech fans, I mean, we've never played them. This will be our first time, experiencing any sort of game against Cincinnati, I think, since the 60s. I think the last time you played them was in 1968, and it was a 10-10 tie. It was something like that. It's been almost 50, 60 years. They hired Iowa State's linebacker coach, so they run that 3-3-5, like double stack safety defense, the one that you have so famously looked awful against for many, many years. Patrick Mahomes was made to look very feeble against this defense many a time. It's he kind of puts his own spin on it, but defensively, that's what you're going to see. You're going to see three guys up front. It's the big pieces you have to worry about. Everybody else on the defensive line is pretty mid, but Dante Corleone is going to be the nose tackle. He is like 6 foot 330. He is a humongous defensive tackle. You've got to figure out a way to manage him on the inside if you want to run in the interior. And then they've got a guy named Eric Phillips. He's top 10 in pressures generated this year off of the edge. That's another guy that you got to watch out for. Everyone else on that team, though, as far as the defensive line is concerned, not anybody that you really should know, and not anybody that I'm particularly concerned about. Eric Phillips is a good pass rusher, not a good run defender. You're really just going to be worried about him on third downs and obvious passing situations. Linebacking core isn't anything special. I think you can take advantage of that. They're competent, but not necessarily superstars. I think very similar to what you saw from Arizona State last week. Their secondary is a little bit better, though. They've got a guy named Derek Canteen sitting in the back safety spot, and he's been pretty good for them. They brought in a ton of transfers. It's like 7 or 8 guys that are all new back there. Logan Wilson is going to be another good player for them. And then you've got Jordan Young is going to be their best corner, and they're all pretty old. These are all redshirt seniors, redshirt juniors, a pretty old group back there. And they're going to sit back there. They're going to play 5 defensive backs. So you're going to see a lot of these guys on the field at the same time. That's kind of what I saw defensively. It's not as good as Iowa State's. They don't quite have the bodies and they don't quite have the experience in the system, and especially the linebackers. The linebackers are what really make this defense. They've got to be extremely smart, and they've got to react quickly to run fit. They are going to line up in a really unique way. I'm interested to see how Barron and Zach Kitley will attack this. It looks like you should run every play, because you'll see 3 defensive linemen and then maybe 2 linebackers. And you're like, well, that's 5-on-5 in the box. We should run. And then all of a sudden there's 8 guys there. So it'll be interesting to see what Barron sees and what Kitley sees. But that's kind of what I had on the defensive side of the ball. I didn't know if anybody else had notes on the team.
Conrad, we know Cincinnati like the back of our hand, right?
Yeah, the only thing I know about Cincinnati is they have a quarterback who hasn't turned the ball over, and that's the school that Tommy Tuberville so famously left you for. So don't know much about Cincinnati. Don't care to waste any of my brain space on Cincinnati, to be honest with you, because you're going to beat them by 3 scores on Saturday night. So they couldn't even point to Lubbock, Texas on a map. They do have to live in the awful state of Ohio. So I'm not really that concerned about Cincinnati. Nothing they do worries me, especially after what Zyler said as well.
I don't really know if I could even, respond to that. I don't think I have anything else to add after that, honestly. So
yeah, I mean, it should be interesting. I think it's going to be, when I look at their offense, though, I think that's where they're much more talented. That's something where, Conrad's kind of noted that they've been better on the offensive side of the ball, 38th in EPA margin. They've been good at their success rate. That's 44.9. That's good for 25th in the country. And they've been really good on their dropbacks, 11th in the country on their success rate. And so Brendan Sorsby's been good. He's the old Indiana starting quarterback. I didn't love him coming over to Cincinnati, but he's been pretty solid for them. He doesn't have any interceptions. Now, I did watch the Pitt game, and he had several called back. He had an awful throw in the end zone that was called back because the defender, had a half of a toe out of bounds. So he's made some bad throws, and he will throw incompletions and bad passes if you pressure him. The problem is the Cincinnati offensive line will probably be the best one you face all year, unless you see somebody in a bowl game. They return to everybody from last year, and that starts with Luke Kandra. He plays right guard for them, oddly enough. That's a really weird place to have your best offensive lineman. But him and Gavin Gerhardt are probably NFL players. Their tackles aren't as good. DeAndre Buford's probably the worst one over on the right side, and then their left guard's going to be a downgrade. But this will be the best offensive line you've seen all year. Going to be a challenge for your defense to get pressure on the interior. That's not really something that we've done a great job of so far, and they love to run the ball. They're going to do a ton of RPO and zone runs. They've got a kid named Corey Kiner, who's a really fast back. He's pretty much the opposite of Scatabo or Taj. It reminds you a little bit of Jacoby Williams. He's going to be really quick. He's still heavy, maybe 200 pounds, but definitely relies a lot more on his speed than his bruising ability. And Sorsby can hurt you on the ground too, mainly in the end zone. He's not going to run very much unless it's third down, fourth down, or they're in the red zone. And then Xavier Henderson, that's going to be the big receiver on the outside for them. He's got 326 yards. He's at 3.13 yards per reception, or yards per route run, excuse me. He's definitely the biggest threat out there. Everybody else is kind of just a jag for me, not anybody that I'm worried about. And then the final receiving option is Joe Royer. He's a tight end transfer from Ohio State, and he is actually pretty good. He's got almost 200 yards on the season, and he gets a lot of those dump-off routes that you'd see somebody like Travis Kelce get, oddly enough, former Cincinnati alum. He is a good player. He'll be the best tight end you've seen all year. And Xavier Henderson's probably the best receiver you've seen all year. I think this is the best team that you've seen all year. I think it's going to be a good challenge for your team and especially for your D-line.
So Z, my question based off hearing all of this is, why was this team picked so low? Because you're talking about some of these guys that we've seen NFL products on the offensive line, tight ends, receivers, running backs. Why was this team picked to finish in the bottom half of the Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, one, it was almost an entirely new team. Like the entire defensive secondary got completely overhauled. I don't think they returned anybody with any sort of experience. Kalen Carroll would be the only guy, but it's essentially a brand new defense on the backside. Their linebackers are all brand new. The only returning guys that they really had were Dante Corleone and Eric Phillips. So you had, 2 or 3 returning starters. It was not a proven unit, and their defense has struggled. It hasn't been a great unit. It's definitely worse than their offense. Brendan Sorsby was new. Joe Royer was new. Xavier Henderson was a transfer. Corey Kiner was a known product, but there was just a ton unknown. They had all of these linemen last year, and they weren't that good. They've taken another step this year, but it was hard to project, this is going to be a top 8 team in the Big 12 when you had some of the stuff and some of the teams that you had coming back. Kind of a similar situation to us, where there'd been some good moments, but they missed a bowl game last year. They weren't particularly impressive. And then whenever you don't bring a quarterback back, or return a quarterback, media members always nail you for that because they always know you by your quarterback. And if they don't know the QB, you tend to get, dropped a little bit in the polls.
Yeah, Conrad, or go ahead. Sorry.
Well, and just to maybe add a little bit more color to what Zyler said, they are 90th in the country in total defense right now. So they're not great. Yep. We're not going to talk about where Texas Tech is because that wouldn't really help our narrative. So we're going to be selective media members and only pick things that fit our narrative, like CNN, different places like that, and Fox News and other places. So they are 90th in the country in total defense. You are in the 100 somethings. I don't even know where you are. And then they're 23rd in total offense. So that's they're like Zyler said, again, they're much better on the offensive side of the ball. And so when you do have somebody that's, I think we're 15th in total offense, so we have a better offense than them, but that just kind of adds some veracity to what we think they are in terms of how they stack up against the rest of the country as well.
Yeah, Conrad. Oh, go ahead, Brennan.
Oh no, go ahead.
If you remove the FCS games, which I like to do because obviously people play really good against their FCS opponents and there's never bad results in there. So if you remove those results, our defense is actually pretty good. I was looking at College Football Insiders today, and they've got us projected as a 10-point favorite, which I think is, pretty rich. I wouldn't have us that high, but they're a lot higher on our defense if you remove FCS games where you always play really good against your opponents and they're never 1-point games at the end. That actually really helps our metrics a lot there.
Well, think about how we've looked, outside, against North Texas and then last week too. Like I'm I'm not very upset with our defense. I mean, sure, it's not perfect, but it's been pretty stellar. You've made strides in the right direction. Your players have gotten more experience. I mean, even Joey in his press conference this week, they asked him about the defense. He said, "You're just seeing guys that are getting more comfortable, that know what to expect, that know how to play college ball now a little bit more." And so you're seeing a defense that seems to be gaining its feet. Like we said, this will be Joey's the defense that has the least amount of experience that he's ever had here and probably will ever have. So you're seeing it just get better because guys are playing more.
I totally agree.
Yeah, to that point, I was going to mention, you had the Washington State game where your defense was put into pretty poor positions. So that 37 points is a little higher than it probably would have been had your offense and special teams helped out. And then since then, you get up 21 and 22 points. So it's not like the last 3 games your defense has been looking like they did against Abilene Christian, Z, and Conrad, to y'all's point. And at the same time, to the Cincinnati schedule, they beat Townsend 38-20. I don't know much about Townsend, but I know they're not any good. They blew a lead to Pitt 28-27. They beat Miami, Ohio 27-16, and then they did skunk Houston 34-0. But it's not like outside of that Houston when anything was very overwhelming and what they looked like as a success. And that's why this team kind of seems a little they're a surprise in a way, 3-1. I think a lot of people probably had picked Pitt to win that game. And so that wasn't necessarily like a big upset for them, but they do seem a little scarier than we might have thought in August. And I think that's why this is a big deal. I mean, you're at home. It's a night game. It's your first blackout game of the year at the Jones. You're going to have the drone show. You're going to have everything going on, the red lights.
Brennan's going to be there.
I'm going to try to get there. I'm moving through a hurricane to get there on time. So, and if you win this game, I feel like we're feeling really good about our team. And we just 3 weeks ago had an episode called "Is the Sky Falling" on Texas Tech football, and here we go. We still have a chance to be 4-1 and 2-0 in conference. And so this is a big deal. I think this game, it can't be overstated how important this is for your season.
I totally agree. I wanted to pose this question. I have another question I want to ask you guys later, but this may be the most you're favored in a game for the rest of the season. I mean, you're going to be favored by 3 to 3.5. I don't know that you'll be a bigger favorite in any other games.
No, you're probably right. I think Conrad probably agrees with you as he's whipped out the Kool-Aid. The Bearcat blow pop.
Bearcat blow pop
has entered the chat, man. Chat. Look at that. But Z, sorry, Conrad, real quick. But Z, I think you're right. The fact that we are favored by 10 points,
we'll be favored by Vegas by 3.5. I mean, that's
okay. But Football Insiders has us a 10-point favorite.
Yep.
And that does seem high. But maybe that should give us confidence at what maybe some people are seeing in our team that we might not have thought 4 weeks ago. So, Conrad?
Yeah. Well, and also this is when I don't know how lines are configured and how they think through those things, whether it's College Football Insiders or Vegas or anything like that. But I would think the fact that you're playing at home at night and it's sold out plays a factor in that, because that's going to be a rowdy crowd. I mean, things are going to get going. I mean, Brennan Baxter is going to be in attendance and Andrew Baxter will as well. So, I mean, it's going to be wild and things are going to be crazy. And so I don't know that Cincinnati necessarily is ready for something like that, because I do think you have one of the toughest places to play in the Big 12 is your home stadium, and you have the best fan base in the country. So I think what you're going to see is a stadium that is just absolutely rocking. And if we get up early, it's not going to be fun to be Brendan Sorsby in Cincinnati. And so I think that's going to play a big factor in it, even though they are much better than any of us thought they would be at the beginning of this year. But, the Kool-Aid's going to be flowing. We're going to be going, and we're going to be getting that victory on Saturday night under the West Texas sky.
I think it'll be an interesting challenge for Joey and the staff, because you have so many young guys that are going to be playing in their first real conference night game. And I think he's going to have to calm some of them down. I don't think he's going to have a hard time amping them up. I think you're going to have to watch, the late hits, the procedural penalty. Some of those guys are going to be amped, especially on the defensive side of the ball. It'll be most likely the loudest environment they've played in so far. Can he, get some of those guys not under control? It's not like they're out of control, but make sure that they play composed. You're going to need your veterans on the defense to do that. That'll be Jacob Rodriguez and CJ Baskerville. Like, those guys have got to calm down. Chapman's played there before, but if Macho is back out on the outside, like, that'll be his second Big 12 start ever, and it's going to be a night game at the Jones. Like, that's going to be a lot of adrenaline for that kid. So hopefully you can manage the team a little bit here. I don't know that you can rely on experience, though, when it comes to composure in an environment like this.
Yeah, and let me reach back into the very deep vault of painful losses in Texas Tech history to 2022, when you played Baylor at home and you got absolutely obliterated. That was the night that Patrick Mahomes was put into the Ring of Honor, that he was there in person, and you were just not ready to play. The moment was definitely too big for you. I don't think this game is necessarily that magnitude, because I think we hate Baylor a lot more than we hate Cincinnati. And Patrick Mahomes, as far as I know, unless him and Travis Kelce want to fly in on Saturday to come to this game, he's not going to be in attendance. So I think it's not as big of a game, but that history and that pain that we felt that night, I really hope that doesn't repeat itself. But it makes me feel good that Joey knows, hey, this is a team that hasn't been through that, and so he can kind of prepare them for what they'll encounter under the lights on Saturday night in Jones AT&T Stadium.
Yeah, and when we think about preparing for the game and what we have to do, I've talked a lot about Cincinnati. I think this is a big game for Barron. There's going to be plenty of times they're going to drop 8 guys in coverage. You're going to see a 3-man pass rush. It'll be that big fella in the middle, and then Eric Phillips on the outside. Can Barron process, and can he, complete passes without throwing interceptions? Can he take the check downs that are 8 yards? Can he not just chunk up deep balls? Like, it'll be a big game for us to see his processing ability, throwing into zone coverage, almost exclusively when they rush 3. I think it's going to be interesting. And if he's picking apart the defense well, I think we're going to have a really good night.
At home, Barron has 11 touchdowns and 0 interceptions this year. So I feel pretty confident about him and what he can do for the team, assuming he plays the way he's been playing at home at the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like each week we kind of say this is a big game for Barron. It's like, can he? We talked about it last week. He didn't really do it. He played well enough to win, but he didn't take over the game. He was 50% completion. It's like, can you go out there and just pick apart a defense and show that you're a top 5-6 quarterback in the Big 12? And that's something that I think we all want to see, so we don't have to rely as much on Taj and the run game and even play calling. Like, improvise, find receivers, buy time in the pocket, scramble when you need to, but just manage the game and make it easy for your team to find a way to victory. So I want to see that out of him. I don't know if we've seen that. And I'm not going to count, Z, just like you, ACU, FCS, not really going to count it. I know he made some clutch plays when he needed to in that game, but This is Big 12, Knight, Jones. It's time to step up. And if you start 4-1 and 2-0 in conference, what you need to do is all in front of you at that point. You've got some winnable home games. We've talked about it. We know what the schedule is. There's some opportunities if you win this game to make some noise and to actually feel excited about October and forward. So, and to give Conrad more reason to chug his Kool-Aid every episode. And before we move on to predictions, and Conrad, I know you have a thought, I'd be remiss if I did not go back to your poetry 10 minutes ago that we glossed over. I don't know. We need to clip that because a tear was swelling in my eye hearing you talk about Jones and the West Texas sun and everything, man. I don't know if it's the Kool-Aid that you're chugging over there, but something's coming out and it's beautiful to listen to.
Well, I think that comes from the heart. Our dear loyal listeners, that comes from the heart and how much these guys love West Texas. I mean, I meant to say this last episode, but being in the Jones last Saturday was almost a spiritual experience for me. Just being back home, and not that it was, but if it was close, it was just a wonderful place to be. And I really think that Saturday night is going to be electric under the lights. I think you're going to see a lot of different things. I think you're going to see a lot of new things. I think you're going to see a team that understands, I think, at this point in Joey's tenure, hey, we've got it. Like it's right there in front of us. Everything, if you just take care of your business week after week, you don't have to play a school with a huge talent discrepancy against you like you did with OU and UT. You don't have to deal with that. If you just take care of business week after week, you have everything right there. And like I announced on Sunday night, we're going to be playing in Arlington, Texas this year. So the Kool-Aid is here. We're going and we are ready to go. And you just got to take care of it one day at a time, 1 week at a time. But I did want to ask you guys a question while we're talking about Barron. If I told you that after 4 games this year that he would have 12 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and be leading the Big 12, I think he is in touchdown passes. I'm not sure about yards where he is. What would you have said and why?
I would have thought we were 4-0.
Yeah, you probably would have convinced me too that the Washington State game didn't happen. I think I agree. I do think that it would show me that the offense was a little more balanced compared to last year, which I also found this interesting. Not to get too off topic, but Taj had 27 rush attempts last game. I remember all offseason, Kitley and McGuire talking about how we can't give Taj like 20 plus rushes each game, and I think he's probably averaging around that, if not more, in the games that he's played. You know, and so it is kind of funny, but I would have definitely thought that Barron was who we kind of expected him to be based off those numbers, but it's a little skewed because the ACU game, he had 5 touchdown passes and had the yards, and then he threw 57, 58 attempts against Washington State, just trying to score as quick as you could. So we haven't seen a consistent and just like effortless 12 touchdowns and 2 interceptions cruising to 4 wins. It's been a little more than you would expect based off those numbers.
Well, that's a little bit more negativity than I'd like to hear on this podcast, especially since we are whipping up Kool-Aid left and right. But also, we do need to celebrate something. We need to take a moment of silence, about 5 seconds, to celebrate the fact that we've played 4 games this year, and we have a healthy starting quarterback. Let's just take about 5 seconds.
And Tyler Shuck is not our quarterback.
Dude, but he's falling out right now.
He's going to get hurt.
We'll find out. Yeah, Notre Dame's he's gonna drop back against Notre Dame, and his season will end on Saturday night.
Yeah. No, I mean, but I think that's a big deal for you that you have Barron healthy because, even if you let's just take if you had Tyler, an average Tyler from last year, if you had him healthy with this team, you just feel good about more things when you don't have to worry about that position. And I think the fact that Barron is healthy, the fact that he's playing, the fact that he is practicing during the week makes a huge difference for the morale of your team. And it's only going to bode well for this Saturday night and the future, assuming he doesn't get hurt. I don't think he will, but just that's something we need to celebrate because that hasn't been something that we've really been able to deal with over the last few years.
Yep. Brennan, you brought up something that I wanted to talk about. You've got 4 kind of pivotal games coming up. So you've got Cincinnati at home this week. You got Arizona on the road next week, kicking off at 10 p.m. Central, if you didn't see that. Then you have a bye. Then you have Baylor at home, and then TCU on the road. I had, my buddy Caleb, we were texting about, that 4-game stretch. And, if I offered you 2-2 right now, would you take it over that 4-game stretch? So Cincinnati at home, Arizona on the road, Baylor at home, TCU on the road. Would you take it or roll the dice?
Roll the dice for sure. And I think so. I think because Arizona and TCU, if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago if I would have taken that 2-2 stretch, I would have signed the contract right then. But now after seeing Arizona and seeing TCU get walloped against SMU, I don't feel like those road games are as hard as and as unwinnable as they might have looked at, earlier in the season. So I'm not saying you're going 4-0 during that stretch, but I think stealing one of those road wins and winning both at home, I do think you'll beat Cincinnati and I do think you'll beat Baylor. I think 3-1 is very realistic over the next 4 games if you stay healthy and your defense continues to improve. Like our guys like Brendan Jordan and CJ Baskerville keep stepping up, and Chapman Lewis and these guys, they have an opportunity to keep, and I don't think they're playing offenses that should scare them too much. So I'm rolling the dice. I say in the next 4 weeks, we're going at least 3-1.
I will never take a win-loss record over 4 games in the Big 12 that doesn't include us being undefeated. I am whipping up way too much Kool-Aid to have any doubt in our football team. We know that TCU. I thought TCU was going to be good, especially after their first game. I was wrong. We knew Baylor was going to be terrible because that's just how they are. And then Arizona, we know that they're not what we thought they would be this year. And then Cincinnati's, I think, not to say that they're the best of those teams, but Cincinnati's a respectable team. I guess I'm just trying to be nice to, not be too mean ahead of Saturday, but I'll roll the dice too, because I do think, assuming you stay healthy, assuming you get Charles Esters back, assuming these guys keep taking steps, it would not shock me in the slightest, and I'd love to hear what our listeners think about this in the comments. It would not shock me if we went 4-0. Assuming our team stays healthy, it would not shock me. I know Zyler's probably going to bring me back to earth here in a second, but
That would shock
it
me.
just would not surprise me if we went 4-0. So I think
just think, you
Zyler,
watched this team like 10 days ago get crushed by Washington State.
Hey,
I guess that was longer than
Zyler,
that ago.
remember,
but
everything runs through Lubbock, baby. Everything runs through Lubbock.
You know why I love this podcast so much, and honestly, just our friendship, is we've got Conrad, who's literally chugging Kool-Aid on the podcast and talking about it and has the jug. Then we've got Zyler, who's like picking Arizona State to win. He picked Washington State to win. He, like, in his core, wants Tech to be 12-0 more than anybody. I mean, Zyler's been a diehard Red Raider since the day he was born, but he tries to be so pragmatic about it. And then there's us who are like, no, Z, like, we're and you're like, cool it, dude.
I think the funnier thing, though, is, if we lose to Cincinnati, Conrad will not pick us to win another game the rest of the year.
We're 3-9. Yeah, we're 3-9.
If we beat Cincinnati, we're going undefeated.
That's
the best part.
That's the roller coaster of the Kool-Aid factory, baby. We just go up and down around with all my emotions that Texas Tech football brings out of me. So absolutely, you're 100% right. If we lose to Cincinnati, I will be
season's over.
It'll be. I'll be like, it's time for basketball season at that point.
All right.
Okay. So, one final note on that, Brennan. So your expected wins over that period are exactly 2. So it's like 58%, 47%, 58, and then 35. It's like 1.98. So 2-2 is about the expectation from the analytics as they stand right now. Obviously, if you beat Cincinnati, that's going to jump up to like 2.5. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. So none of you would take 3-1. If I offer 3-1, would you take it, Brennan?
Oh, I would take 3-1. I would take a split road game I would take the 2 wins at home against Cincy and Baylor, and then a loss to. I would rather lose to Arizona than TCU, so I'll say a loss to Arizona. And I'll just say, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but if that does happen, and you're sitting there at 6-2, and you're now 4-1 in the Big 12. I mean,
you got a chance.
I mean, talk about a successful season just on that alone. Now, assuming you don't. Lose your last 4. Right, yeah. But if you're 6-2 and 4-1, any Red Raider fan would have signed up for that in August.
Totally.
And so you would have had a great season to that point. And I would take that in a heartbeat for sure.
Yeah, I think I would take 3-1 immediately. And if I could choose the loss and I could choose it, would you take the Cincinnati home loss and then reel off Arizona, Baylor, TCU, or would you just lose the Arizona game at 10 p.m. Central, the game nobody's going to watch, and then win against Cincinnati, Baylor, and TCU?
I would take the loss to Arizona, but I would much rather beat TCU than I would rather beat Baylor and TCU than Cincy and Arizona.
Yep,
it's hard because if you oh my goodness, this is a hypothetical, but that's why we get to talk about all these things on a podcast where we do have listeners. Andrew Baxter, if you're listening to this, if you could tell me right now, I just don't like Baylor or TCU, and that's putting it nicely. And so if you told me right now any scenario in which you beat Baylor and TCU, it'd be really hard for me not to take that, just because beating Baylor at home would be so sweet, but also beating TCU in their home stadium where you're going to have more fans there than they will. That would be so sweet.
By the way, I cannot wait. And I'm leaning in because I don't know if my mic is low enough or not. I know I'm seeing it keep popping on. But I cannot wait for Baylor and TCU week on this podcast, because Conrad's disdain, if you do not know this, his disdain for Baylor and TCU runs so deep. And so if you're thinking you don't want to keep listening to this podcast, just come back in a couple of weeks, please, because you will not want to miss Conrad's Kool-Aid update when it's Baylor and TCU for sure.
And
Conrad,
I will go ahead, Zyler.
I have a bunch of Baylor friends from my time in Dallas. They're like, "Yo, heard Z had a podcast. We're gonna hop on and listen to some episodes." And I was like, "Man, do not listen for the Baylor week. Like, do not listen to some of that stuff that's gonna be said. Just as a warning."
Stay away.
What I may do on we'll call it Baylor Hate Week. I may just take a bunch of facts from their university and just bring them on the podcast to showcase for the entire world to see. I don't know yet. I haven't decided. I'm gonna think about it some more. But we may have
facts?
Facts. Just some things out of
my
their
goodness.
just some truths out of their history that I just don't like. I may have to bring those out on the pod that week, but we'll see. I don't know. But
There'll be some Baptist on Baptist crime.
well, that's yeah. We'll talk about that later.
Can it also be Waco Hate Week? Like, can we incorporate Waco into that conversation?
Dude, if I had $1 for every single time I had somebody tell me that Waco was better than Lubbock, I'd have the biggest house in Lubbock, Texas right now. Like, it wouldn't even be a question.
Yeah, it's a fair comp, I guess, but Lubbock beats Waco 10 times out of 10.
No, it's not a fair comp. No, it's not. One of them is like.
We're gonna start Baylor Hate Week today.
Yeah, Baylor actually. Time out.
Can I make? Let me just make this one analogy and then
one comment, then let me just go to predictions.
Baylor is Waco. Waco is like, oh, I don't know. Not the maybe I'll put it this way. They're like the armpit of Texas. It's just like you drive through it. You're not really thinking about it very much. It doesn't really make an impression on you, and it's always so dirty because of how much construction's going on there. I'll leave it there, and then we can wait till Baylor Hate Week to talk about
hold some thoughts because we'll have a whole episode dedicated
really
to
hard.
it. So hey, and before we do the predictions, Z, you were correct. 10-10, September 21st, 1968, against Cincinnati in Lubbock. So great job, man. You got it. I wonder if you looked it up on the same thing I did. I found so.
There was a guy on Red Raider Sports that commented. He said, "I was at this game my freshman year," and I was like, "Dear God, this guy is like 1,000,000 years old. This is my granddad on here posting." But yeah, he said he was at the game, and I was like, "Oh, that's
yeah, he'd be like 74 years old if that was the case."
It would be my granddad, basically. Yep.
That's my dad's age. My dad's 72. He actually graduated from Tech. Shout out Steve Ted in 1974. Dude's old, man. But diehard Red Raider, so he lives young.
Does not look 70. He didn't even look close to that.
It's called a. I won't say what it's called, but I'll save him the embarrassment. All right, so let's go to predictions. All right, I'll start with you, Conrad. What is the prediction? And will we be chugging Bearcat Blow Pop Sunday afternoon?
Before I make my prediction, I just need to have a little Bearcat Blow Pop.
And again, if you are not watching this on YouTube or Spotify, Conrad has a 2-liter bottle of Kool-Aid that he keeps next to his desk that he has been chugging for the last 2 episodes. So make sure to come and check our faces out, and you can watch Conrad chug some Kool-Aid on the episode as well. So I'll go, Conrad. Go ahead.
I may have to drink some more Kool-Aid. No, I'll go. Let me go 38-17 Texas Tech. I do think your defense is going to play well. I think you're going to score well. I did drink some Kool-Aid, so that is maybe a little bit outlandish prediction, but I'll own it. I'll take it. I'll ride with it. I think you're going to win 38-17.
All right, Z?
Man, I'm torn. I think you are probably the better team. I think it's, it won't shock me to see either team win this game. I think an interception goes the wrong way or a missed call goes, against you. It won't shock me to see Cincinnati win this game. I'll take us to win, though, 34-31. I think the offenses will move the ball. I'm pretty confident we'll be able to, as long as Barron's not throwing interceptions and we establish the run game a little bit, we're getting 5 yards a carry, 5.5. I think you're going to be able to move the ball. I do worry about your defense's ability to stop Sorsby if we're not getting pressure. He can throw good balls. It's going to be like Sam Levitt if he had an arm and could accurately place the football. I do worry about our secondary a little bit. I think they'll score some. I'll go 34-31.
I'm just happy you're picking us to win this week, actually.
I know it's a big step for me.
But it's close. It's not a good. It's a
It is
3-point. Yeah, it's a close. I'm going to go Texas Tech 42-27. I think that we'll be able to move the ball on Cincinnati's defense. I do think Cincinnati will have some big plays, but kind of like we saw in the Arizona State game, I do think the defense will make enough stops, create maybe some havoc, get a couple more turnovers, and find a way to kind of make this game out of reach in the fourth quarter for Cincinnati. I do think the crowd is going to play a factor. You might see some jitters, like you guys mentioned earlier in the episode, with some of the young guys, but 7 o'clock in the Jones nighttime, I think Joey, this is kind of what he lives for. He's like the ultimate hype man that we talk about. I do think that the guys will come out physical, come ready to play, and just be excited to be in that atmosphere and play well. And I even, like, the ACU game was technically a night game. There was August, so the sun went down a little bit later, when they came out a little shell shock. So I think they'll be a little more prepared for this moment, and I think we'll find a way to win and have a great game overall. And I think I expect Taj to have a big game. I know what Z mentioned on the 3-man front and everything, but I think that this is a game where you can really rely on Taj Brooks to have some key moments for your offense.
Yeah, and this is kind of a show me game. The way I think about it is, you've got everything going in your favor. You're coming off a win. You were the better team last week. It's kind of show me what you think you are. Show me why all the hype was being whipped up this offseason. Show me why we thought Baron Morton was one of the best quarterbacks in the Big 12. Show me why we thought our defense was going to take us to where we thought it would. Show me why Micah Hudson, if he plays, was a 5-star recruit. It's just kind of show me who you are. Show me who you can be. And if they can just put everything together, I can only imagine how crazy this crowd will be if we somehow, some way play up to our full potential, play how we should, and absolutely demolish the Bearcats. Because I think we could. I think that could happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I think if it does happen, we'll all be very, very pleased with seeing that we are and we can be the team that we thought we could be in the offseason.
Yeah, and I think that it's a game where the crowd is going to be crazy. It is family weekend, so you're going to have a lot of parents in the stadium, a lot of kids in the stadium. I'm really excited to be there and just see the atmosphere. I know y'all mentioned last week at the 2:30 game at Arizona State, it wasn't, not that it was a bad atmosphere by any means, but that it wasn't necessarily just raucous, and so I expect the crowd to come out this Saturday and definitely have an impact on the game as well. And the Jones, Conrad, to your point, is Joey is becoming, quite the home at coach. I mean, we have been really good at home under Joey McGuire, and we have beaten Texas and OU at home under Joey McGuire. And so expect that trend to continue. And it seems like the switch is flipping back to where the Jones is becoming a nightmare place to play for opponents, which is what it was, from 2000 to 2010. So, all right, well, there's Cincinnati, and we'll be excited. We'll be back here on Monday as well to go over if we were right and wrong and have Clayton. So before we get out of here, each Thursday episode, we go through our Big 12 power rankings as well, and we finish off with a look ahead and then into tech trivia with Zyler. So Clayton, because he's at that concert, wherever he is, hope he's bobbing his head, having a good time. I'll go ahead and read off his power rankings for the week, and then go to Conrad and Zyler too. So
Brennan, I copied in Clayton's. They're going to be the exact duplicate of mine, so we don't have to read his.
Oh, they're exactly yours. Okay, never mind.
Unless you put those in the show notes, but I think I just
no, they're different. I'm looking at.
Okay, then go for it. Then
Okay.
go for it.
Yeah, they're definitely. I mean, wait, see. I think you got an error. Don't change it yet, because I want you to look at it and read it out loud. Because I think it's wrong. I'm looking at yours right now, and I would hope the number one team isn't who I'm looking at. But don't change it. Okay.
No, it's
Clayton's got Utah at 1.
I won't.
UCF, Iowa State, BYU, Oklahoma State dropped to 5, Kansas State dropped to 6. He's got Texas Tech at 7. Clayton had us at 14, I believe, 2 weeks ago. So we are moving up. Colorado at 8. TCU dropped to 9 after SMU. He's got West Virginia and then Cincy at 10, 11. And then the bottom half, Arizona, Baylor, Arizona State, Kansas, and Houston rounding out the bottom of the Big 12. So anything from Clayton's here as he has us slowly rising a little bit, and he's had some teams fall off. So he's pushing us towards that upper echelon of the Big 12. We'll see what he thinks after the Saturday night outcome. So Zyler, man, I don't know if you've been watching much football, but I'm looking at your number one team here, dude. And why don't you go ahead and read off what is obviously a typo, but tell us who your number one team is this week, Zyler.
You know, I don't know how this got in there like that, but my number one team this week is the Houston Cougars, who went scoreless against Cincinnati. They lost 34-0. I'm going to have to get that fixed. But
their season's
turning around. You have the stock just rising after that blowout loss. Yeah,
I just saw a lot that I believed in, even though they weren't able to score. They scored a lot of points in my heart, and that's why I put them up to the top. So, I got Utah number one. I think with a bullet. Utah, UCF, and Iowa State. Those are kind of my clear top three. I think there's a big separation. Then I've got Kansas State and Oklahoma State in their own little tier. And then it's going to be BYU, TCU, Arizona, Texas Tech, and Cincinnati. And then actually West Virginia kind of in their next little tier. And then I've got Colorado, Baylor, Kansas, Arizona State, and then Houston, like 50 spots below everybody. That's a rough team this year.
Yeah, it's crazy that's a rough team, and they still almost beat Oklahoma in Norman a few weeks back.
How bad is Jackson Arnold? Oof.
He's so bad he's not even playing anymore. That's how bad he is.
It's crazy.
Is he starting this week?
No, Michael Hawkins is starting. No,
he is starting? Okay. Wow. Okay, Conrad, go ahead, brother.
Yeah, so I've got Utah at 1, Iowa State at 2, I've got UCF at 3, and I have the Mormons a little bit higher than all of you guys. I've got them at 4. Really impressed with them. I think until they stop winning, I may have to buy their Cougar juice. You know, you never know. Cougar juice can be good or bad, so I may have to buy some BYU Cougar juice. Then I've got Oklahoma State at 5 with Mr. Bowman, Kansas State at 6. And then I've got your Red Raiders, who are at 7. They may go up to 1 if we win this week, but we'll have to see. Just steadily rising. And then West Virginia at 8, Arizona State at 9, Cincinnati at 10, TCU, it pleases me to say they are 11th, Arizona at 12, Colorado at 13, Kansas at 14, it pleases me to say Baylor is at 15, and then we've got the Houston Cougars at 16. So those are my rankings. Would love to hear what you guys think about those in the comments below.
Yeah, and looking at these, I do think that we've had some change in the Big 12. I do think that last week when there was kind of an undisputed like Utah, Oklahoma State, Iowa State, but I know Z, you're pretty high on UCF. Conrad, it looks like you've moved up too, but BYU entering the top 10 is something that not a lot of us expected to see this year. And so they've been a surprise, and they do play Baylor this week. And that's a huge game, Z. I know you've mentioned it's a big game for Aranda, and you said that BYU will be top 4 for you if they win. So is this game against Baylor more of a prove it to me type game for you in your mind? And if they do win this game, you kind of look at them as a serious contender in the Big 12? And you're on mute, by the way. Yeah.
I like to build the suspense.
Yeah.
They had their big game at SMU, which obviously is looking better. It was a disaster game for SMU, though. I mean, I thought it said more about SMU than it did BYU at the time. And then the Kansas State game. I mean, Kansas State outgained them. They were higher on success rate. They just had some really crazy plays go against them. They had the fumble recovery for a touchdown, the punt return for a touchdown, the interception on like the 30. And so BYU was gifted a lot of opportunities. I don't know that on a per play basis, BYU was just manhandling Kansas State. I think the environment had a lot to do with it. Maybe Avery Johnson isn't as good as we thought, but if BYU goes into Baylor and wins against, probably a middle of the pack to lower the pack Big 12 team on the road again, that's 3 results where you can't just say, okay, this is just lucky. I think that'll be pretty impressive to me. And I'll be very, pending other results. I think they'll definitely be top 5, if not top 4.
Conrad, you picking BYU?
I'll pick anybody against Baylor. So yes, I'm picking BYU. Unbiasedly, I'm picking BYU. I just think I do think they're a good team. I think they're gonna go to Waco, and I think they're gonna win. I don't know what time that game. That's an 11
It's at
a.m.
11.
games. So
Oof.
that's gonna be. I mean, that's gonna be tough.
That's good for
Utah to
BYU.
Waco. Yeah. So it is good. I think BYU will win that game though, pretty convincingly. I just don't know that maybe Sawyer Robertson will be able to score and keep up with Jake Retzlaff. But I don't know. We'll see what happens. That'll be interesting to me to witness that game.
Yeah, and then you've got a game that looked like it'd be a lot bigger deal last week, but now it's for the wrong reasons. You've got Kansas State and Oklahoma State, and the loser of that game is going to be 0-2 in the conference, which this was going to be a game that some people probably thought would be two teams that would be competing in Arlington, or at least for the Big 12 championship game. It looks like the loser of this game will have a very hard time getting there. And so this is a huge game for these programs. If I had to ask right now, gut feeling, who are y'all picking to win this game?
It's at Oklahoma State, right?
Texas
I think
Tech.
I'll take Oklahoma State.
No, I think
Or
it's
is
at
it at
Kansas
Kansas?
State. It's at Kansas State.
I'll take whoever's at home. I'll take Kansas State.
Conrad?
I
Uh-oh.
think we may have lost Conrad.
Did we lose Conrad? Well, we haven't had this happen yet in all episode 10 here, and we've lost a member. Okay.
It's a good freeze frame, though.
It is.
I will say,
look at his face. I wish we had him. I wish we had him chugging Kool-Aid while he froze on. I don't know where he went, but what were you going to say about the game, Z?
yeah, I think that's a big one. Those were teams that were, picked second and third in the conference, and the loser, like you said, is probably out of the conference race. I mean, they could go 7-2, and I think that probably gets you in, but that's a lot. That's going to be a ton for them to overcome. Going to be an interesting one for both of those programs. Somebody's going to leave super upset.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And then you've got another game. I mean, TCU and Kansas, not that TCU is necessarily favored at the top, but Kansas was definitely looked at as a dark horse Big 12 contender. And so Kansas coming in, the loser of this game is going to be 0-2. And so this is why I think this week is actually more important for Tech. I know it's early and a lot could happen in the next 8 weeks, but you've got teams that are going to be 0-2 in the conference that could have been competing for the title, and you have a chance to go 2-0 in that same weekend. It would be a huge morale boost to see, hey, you're kind of 2 games up on some teams that were picked by a lot of media members and a lot of people just around the country to win your conference, and now you've got a 2-game lead on those teams, and you don't play them. You play TCU, but you don't play Kansas, and you don't play Kansas State, and you don't play Utah.
Yep.
So there's a lot of opportunity here for Tech to get that win and see a couple of these teams fall to 0-2. So, are you back, man?
Yeah, man.
We lost you for a second.
I don't know what happened, but we're back. I was told I have no internet, but I do. So
it was too much Baylor talk. He had to hop off.
Yeah,
your face was getting too red. I thought it was a Kool-Aid for a little bit, but it probably was all the Waco conversation. So, but you're here. You didn't miss much actually. We just went over the TCU Kansas game, and we're all here. Hey, this is what happens when you run a podcast through web. It's not perfect. We'll lose some members time to time, but we'll still come out with some quality product. Who knows what this episode will look like now? We hope we survive. And then you got another game: Arizona at Utah, and Colorado at Central Florida. Another really big game in the Big 12 as well too. So we're starting to see some of these matchups of teams that not a lot of people knew about compared to who are they coming in? Are they going to be effective? Are they going to be able to compete for a conference title? And we get some of these matchups now this week. It'll be a lot of fun to watch.
So thoughts I had: Arizona at Utah for Tech's sake solely. I know that if they're beating Utah, that probably means they're really good. But just for our chances at winning the game, would you rather Arizona be coming off a win at Utah or coming off of a loss to Utah?
I probably coming off a loss. And I think Utah's so physical. That's why I'm interested to watch the Oklahoma State-Kansas State game, because when you play Utah, you get beat up. And so my hope for this game is that Arizona it's probably their lack of physicality comes out, and Utah's ability to just bully them is pretty evident, and we can see that for 4 quarters. And they just come into our game tired, and it's a late start. Even in Arizona, it's a late start.
Mm-hmm.
So I would much rather them come off a loss and be beaten up against Utah than look better than we thought they might be.
Yep,
Conrad?
I think I agree.
Yep, I totally agree as well. I agree as well.
Yeah.
And I do think I just want Arizona to come into that game so dejected, so without hope. And I think if they lose and they lose handily to Utah, that's how it'll be. And I don't see an Arizona team that knows they're not very good coming out really that hot against us, especially if they lose like they could against Utah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, all right, man. Well, hey, that's the Big 12. That's Cincinnati week. That's the Bearcat blow pop. I mean, that's everything you need going into week 5 of the college football season and to be excited about your Red Raiders this Saturday night. So we like to end each episode with a tech trivia question from Zyler here on the Broadway Shuffle. And you get a lot of good information here. We've had conversations on punters. We've had conversations on leading rushers. I mean, there's nothing that you can't get from Zyler at Tech Trivia. So, Z, what do you got for us tonight?
Yeah, getting a night game at the Jones, especially conference play, is something that's been a lot of fun. But this may be, an interesting fact. Do you know the last season that we won a night conference game at home wearing all black? You don't even have to name the game or the opponent, just the year.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
2022?
Yeah, against Oklahoma.
Against Oklahoma?
We have not won a conference game at home wearing all black since October 18th, 2014 against Kansas. It's been 10 years since. Now, it's conference game, and you have to be wearing all black, so no white, nothing like that. But it's been 10 years since you've won a game in all black.
Really? What were we wearing against Oklahoma 2 years ago?
We were all black.
Were we not?
It was
But that may not have been.
Yeah.
That may not have started at 7 p.m. though. That may have ended late. It may have been an afternoon game and not started at 7. Is that what it was?
Yeah. So it's kind of a janky stat because you have to be wearing all black and it has to be a night game. But yeah.
Wow.
Gosh, really?
Wow.
That's
wow. We were wearing red jerseys, and we're wrong. That was a red jersey game. I'm looking right at it.
Against OU?
So, yeah, red jerseys. So Z's, hey, I trust the trivia master, man. I'm not here to question Z's knowledge. That's why we don't know. He does. So obviously he's right. 2014. Wow. Blackout games too. Wow. Like at the nighttime. Do you feel like? Well, I guess when we were in school from like 2015 to 2020, we barely won any conference games. So, maybe
I
that's
need to go
why.
look. It'll be a trivia question at some point. You had a horrible record against teams that were not from the state of Kansas at home in the Big 12. It was something like you hadn't won a game in like 3 years or something like that at home against a non-Kansas team. It was something ridiculous. I'll have to go look
my gosh.
and find it. But
thankfully that's in the past.
It's brutal. Well, maybe that's a next week question. Well, guys, that was a lot of fun. We appreciate everyone listening, and sorry for our technical difficulties here towards the end of the episode, but make sure to like and subscribe on our YouTube channel, at the Broadway Shuffle, a Texas Tech Sports Podcast, and follow all of our social media channels at the Broadway Shuffle and then at X at the Broadway Shuff. And then you can also listen to us wherever you get your podcast at the Broadway Shuffle. So, gentlemen, I'm excited. We'll have our sights and sounds from the Jones. Z and I will be there on Saturday night, cheering on the Red Raiders and hopefully celebrating with some Bearcat blow pop on Sunday with a 4-1 record and a 2-0 conference record. So, looking forward to talking to you guys next time, and come and chug our Kool-Aid, and we'll see you guys on Monday. So, Rick and everyone have a great night.
Thanks, Brennan.
Thanks, Brennan. Right. Baby.